I guess we're going to be back on the lanes today after last week's video, which what I thought would have been pretty cool and fun of being in the pro shop. We noticed there was a substantial decline in the number of views, so we just took that as that, you know what, we need to be on the lanes. Obviously, more of you want to see balls go down the lane. We can answer some more questions based on layouts and bowling balls, bowling ball technology. So we'll just jump right in. Today, Josh was just telling me some of the questions or topics that you would like to hear more about. As we get going, please throw them out there to us while we are live. If you're watching this video at a later time, that's fine. Please post your questions or topics that you'd like us to talk about in the comment section, and then next week we'll try to hit some of those, okay? So let's try to get this to become more of what you guys want rather than more of what I think would be cool. And hopefully through the course of time we can be meeting in the middle. We'll do some cool things that are coming off the top of my head, and we'll be meeting some of your questions and comments. So diving right in, Josh, what was the first thing you said we need to talk about?
A lot of people ask about asymmetrical bowling balls versus symmetrical. You know, the different characteristics between the two different types of bowling.
Okay, so asymmetrical versus symmetrical. You know, if we're really going to be talking about this, you have to understand. Well, you don't have to understand, because you won't understand. A lot of people see balls going down the lane, and they think there's this magic component about the ball. Basically, relative in Bowl U terms, and Rick, if you watch this, please post something in the comments, so if I'm doing it justice, that I can feel good about it, and if there's something that you need to clarify, please do so. So Rick, that's for you. Relative to Bowl U, when we're talking about bowling balls, there's two main components. There's amount of friction, and there's the response time characteristic that ball yields as it comes in contact with less and less oil. We've been over that in recent videos or previous videos. When we're talking about asymmetrical balls, gosh, I hear people talk about asymmetrical balls are stronger. Well, I guess they can be. An asymmetrical ball with a weak cover versus a symmetrical ball with a strong cover. Which one's stronger? Obviously the symmetrical ball with the stronger cover. So it's all, you know, I was talking with somebody in R&D at Storm, and research and development at Storm. I actually think it was Chris Schlemmer at one point in time, and it was at Junior Gold a few years ago. And
that's Roto Schlem for everybody.
Yeah, Roto Schlem. So Chris, if you're watching this, thank you for how you've helped me through the years and understanding this. A lot of people think that making a bowling ball is just as easy as like going to the grocery store and you say, okay, let's see, I'm going to go and I'm going to put a bunch of this chemical structure and mix it with this one and mix it up, and that's going to be our cover stock. And then to make the next ball, oh, we're just going to put this core in it because this core is great, and then we're going to mix it with this cover, and this is how it's going to roll. And how often that doesn't necessarily come out just that easy. It's not like, well, I need a little stronger high road type of reaction, and so we're going to make a ball and just add a little bit more salt in the cover stock and make it a little bit stronger. It's not like seasoning a steak. How many bowling balls from every company come off the product line, they come off the out of the R&D, and it's marketed as being one way, and then we all throw it down the lane, and it's like, well, wait a minute, this isn't quite that, and then that ball doesn't make it past 2 or 3 months. And then how many times do you get a ball in your hand? And it's around for 6 months, 9 months, a year, 3 years, 8 years. The High Road just had its 11th year anniversary, so happy birthday, High Road. The IQ Tour, well, when did that come out? 2010, probably, something like that.
Yeah,
Maybe 2011, whenever that was, the IQ Tour. So that's been out. You look at balls like the Phase 2, that's been out for 2 or 3 years now. Bowl U calls those type of balls, those are proven performance balls. And I know I'm supposed to be talking about asymmetrical versus symmetrical balls, as though it's a match, right? Whenever you have the word versus in between two things, they're working against each other. And it's not. An asymmetrical ball, typically, in Bowl U terms, would be typically maybe a little quicker response time than symmetrical balls. If I'm on a pattern that where the scoring pace is really, really low, or a pattern's really dirty, or there's a lot of transition that's going to be flowing around throughout the qualifying block, I may, as a strategic option, I may lean more towards symmetrical balls. But does that mean that a asymmetric ball might, just match up perfectly for 2 or 3 games? No, of course not. But typically for me, I think symmetrical balls are, I would say, are a little bit more predictable as transition is occurring. That's what I want you to understand. It's not from one shot to the next shot, how does this ball relate to this ball? It's as transition is occurring. How often does transition occur? Every single shot that somebody throws down the lane, there is transition that happens. Whether it's a plastic ball at a spare, or whether it's a ball that's a really strong, marketed as a hook monster, but drilled with a 2-inch pin. There's still transition, whether it's oil being picked up, oil depletion, or oil being repositioned down the lane. I want to throw a shot, and I want to show you something, and I just thought of this, so that if this matters to you, then great. And if it doesn't, then go ahead, fast forward when you watch this later. But I want to throw one shot. I'm going to pick a ball, I'll use this Pro Motion. Not for any other reason, just that we just finished bowling the league makeup, and I have my thumb sleeve still in this. And this will be a good ball for you to see the oil on the ball. But I want you to know something. When your ball comes back, it's on the ball return, there's no oil on the bow ties. None. It's gone. So I'm going to show you this, and then we're going to talk about that. So I don't care where you throw, it doesn't strike. This is just talking about transition. Okay. Throw a ball down the lane. Obviously, it was in the oil. The oil allowed the ball to get to the right of the head pin, and then the friction allowed the ball to get back to the head pin. But I want you to look. The ball just came back. There's the oil on the ball. What happened right here? There's no oil. Come all the way back over to the other side of the bow ties. There's the lines converging. The lines converging. What happened? There's no oil there. Where did it go? It got redeposited at the end of the pattern. And it gets redeposited at the end of the pattern in these like little hash mark type of lines, like the hash marks when you're driving down the road in between the lanes of a highway. It's a little hash mark. And depending on how much flare you're using, or the people on your pair are using, will dictate how long those lines are. As the flare rings are really, really wide, that bow tie is relatively short. As the flare rings become less and less flare, then there's a longer position, a longer amount of time that a ball can redeposit oil, and the lines are a little bit longer. But what about a plastic ball? Plastic balls don't flare. So when we shoot a 10-pin or a single-pin spare, a cross-lane spare, if you go watch that, there's one long line of transition at the end of the pattern. Well, in looking at this ProMotion, wait a minute, I haven't touched it. What happened to all the oil? It's gone. Where'd it go? Well, there's a little bit left right there. Can you see that, Tim? Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a little bit left right in here, but where did the rest of it go? It absorbed in the ball, number one. What effect does that oil absorption have on the response time of that bowling ball? Over time, it slows the response time down. Okay, it's not a big deal. But where did that oil come from? It got peeled off the lane. So as transition is occurring, what is transition? Oil being removed from the pattern, and also oil being redeposited at the end of the pattern. No matter what angle people are using, if somebody's playing out over here to the right versus there's the word again, versus somebody playing in here and hooking the ball a lot, as those lines are converging toward the end of the pattern, there becomes more and more depletion nearing the end of the pattern. And it's only about this wide. It really is only about this wide. There's depletion that develops toward the end of the pattern. As we get closer and closer to the foul line or farther back away from the pins, those angles are more widening out, and you don't see as much depletion in that zone of the lane. I hope this is making some sense. As the oil is getting redeposited down the lane, there's more and more transition down the lane. So there's a lot of people that I've heard many people, and some very respected people, that say, well, transition is a myth. Yeah, there's really no such thing as transition. That's not true at all.
Who said that?
It doesn't matter. We're not talking about names. The point is that there are people that say, well, yeah, there's really no such thing as transition. No such thing as carry down, I think, is actually the word that they use. Carry down doesn't happen anymore. Now, what's really the truth? When I was growing up, carry down happened every shot, those lines were very, very long at the end of the pattern. Why? Because we didn't have balls that flared that much back when I was growing up. As technology has evolved and cover stocks have become more absorbent and cores have become more dynamic and unstable, that therefore the flare has increased. So certainly, without a doubt, oil depletion is probably a bigger factor, as is carry down. But to say that carry down doesn't happen, that's just not true at all. Okay? Our job is to adapt to those changes. And as transition is occurring, asymmetrical balls typically are a little bit more sensitive to that transition, as is symmetrical balls. So I hope that answers your questions. And actually, the person that asked that question, I think, is here today. Does that answer your question a little bit? I'm sure on the way here that you were listening to our cast. So is that answering your question a little bit better, Dave? Do you mind me mentioning your name? Too bad, I just did. Dave, thanks for the question. So asymmetrical versus symmetrical. So I got 5 bowling balls out here. We have a symmetrical, I guess what we would call solid in the ProMotion. I've been using this ball quite a bit. I find that this is a pretty darn good ball to be using in leagues. I feel like it blends out that lateral wet dry pretty good just in the ball. And so I've been using it a lot. Over here I have my trusty Idol. Obviously a symmetrical solid again.
Can I ask you a question before we go a little bit
Sure.
deeper in that?
Yes.
So Kyle asks, does somebody that uses a plastic ball for their spares at a 10 pin, does that lead you to believe that carry down can potentially be an issue for people making their spares with spare balls? I think he's trying to say, well, the spare making going across lane at spares with a spare ball adjust the pattern to where you're thinking about that constantly.
Well, I guess I'll answer that with a question. Does a spare ball going down the lane make the pattern change? Yes. So, as more and more spare balls are going down the lane, is there more and more oil moving around? Yes, of course. So, to what degree does that affect your spare strategies? No, that's for you to decide. Our job is to take into account that oil is moving around all the time. One of the benchmark theories that Bowl U teaches around is bowling has been, and always will be about transition, about oil moving around. As long as there's applied oil on that machine, those obstacles are going to move, whether we like it or not. So when you text me, Brad, I'm bowling on the chameleon pattern, what do I do? Every one of you, if you have, or other people that ask me, my response is pretty much the same. First of all, you're not bowling on the chameleon pattern, you're bowling on a chameleon pattern. It's a chameleon pattern. Second of all, the people you are bowling with dictate how the pattern is going to evolve. So our job is to be using the most important ball that we have. And it's not on the rack, it's our eyeball. Ha 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 ha, Brad. Yeah, that's funny. Eyeball, I get it. I'm serious. Our job is to be using our eyes to recognize and take into account where everybody's been playing and try to adapt to the transition that the field is creating. How many of you swear that every single night that you walk into your league, it's a different pattern? Oh, here they go. Yep, we walk in again this week and they change the pattern again this week. Who changed the pattern this week? The other people you're bowling with. That's who changed the pattern. I can tell you that we've only changed the pattern once in the last 4 years. Once. Yes, humidity affects things, and topography of the given pair that you're bowling on affects things, and the temperature of the oil. Now that it's starting to get colder, we have to keep our lane machine in a different part of our bowling center, because if we keep it back in the normal storage area, it gets a little too cold back in there, and that affects the viscosity of the oil. Does that mean we changed the pattern? No. We haven't touched or manufactured anything in that machine in years, except one time, and that was a few months ago. Well, why is it so different every single week? Well, you're on a different pair. The topography of that pair might be different. The racks on that pair might be different. But bowling is, always has been, and always will be about transition. Who dictates the transition? You do. So if you don't like what you're turning the pattern into, stop moaning and groaning to the proprietor. That's my soapbox. Sorry about that. Other bowlers and proprietors, I hear it all the time. Don't we hear it all the time in here?
Yeah, well,
everywhere we go.
Well,
now, are there issues?
A lot.
Hold on. Are there issues occasionally with lane machines? Yes. We've had them here, And I've just heard recently that there are other places that have issues with lane machines, and I'm sorry, it happens. I mean, we schedule here, we have a strict schedule as to when our lane machine is going to malfunction. It's very important that we keep up on that schedule and make sure that it malfunctions right identically when we schedule it to malfunction. No, Josh is here shaking his head. Kind of on a soapbox today, but I want you all to be thinking about this stuff. As a bowler, I used to say those same things. I can't believe they're that different today. Out on tour, wow, they're really different today. And are there different characteristics and things that happen? And maybe somebody inadvertently puts the wrong pattern out? Of course that happens every now and then, and we're sorry when it happens. But the point is that symmetrical and asymmetrical balls, the point is bowling is about transition. The difference in those two balls is the usability through transition. And I just kind of switched my thing. Now, is there somebody that is saying something that, am I saying something that I shouldn't?
No.
Okay. All right, we got two guys shaking their head, and I think it's awesome. I like controversy from time to time. I think that's good. If I'm creating controversy, then so be it. Asymmetrical balls. I have 3 of them here. I have the Halo Solid. I have the Astrophysics, which is a pearl, and I have my trusty Crux Prime. These 2 balls, solids, but they're asymmetrical. I find that these balls, as I'm using them, I have to be very careful that I pay attention how the pattern is unfolding. Typically, these 2 balls are a lot more sensitive to the changes as these 2 balls. Well, they're stronger balls, Brad, and they're stronger cores. Well, yeah, oh no, I know that, but the question was very much regarding symmetrical versus asymmetrical. So, Dave, you're happy with that answer? You good with that? Okay, what else do we want to talk about?
Well, Cody just asked, what difference between them and urethane?
Difference between what and urethane?
Well, that's what I was just going to ask, but I figured maybe you would understand it. So, Cody, if you're listening, what did you exactly mean? Just type it there.
Okay, so as Cody is typing that, I do want to say this. There's a lot of people that think that, oh yeah, they're using urethane. So look at how much oil's getting down lane. It's directly affected to the amount of flare that urethane creates. Now, on the Storm and Roto Grip side, the hot cell, that flares quite a bit. If I throw one shot with that ball and one shot with one of my asymmetric balls and one shot with one of my symmetric balls, all 3 of them flare. You go down the lane, the lines look almost identical. Well, yeah, but that hot cell, man, it makes so much oil go down lane. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So what deposits more oil down lane? A urethane ball that flares a lot, or a resin ball that flares very little? A urethane ball that flares a lot, or a resin ball that flares a little? Which ball redeposits more oil down lane? I hope the answer is obvious. Well, how do you know? Well, when it comes back, look at it. How much flare is on that ball? Funny, I still have the marks on this ball from last week, but I'm going to throw it just the way it is. Urethane ball. This is going to redeposit so much oil down lane you won't even believe it. If I walk down lane, I'd probably slip and fall after one shot. The response time of a urethane ball typically is a lot slower than resin balls. I'll give you that. Response time characteristic of a urethane ball is typically slower, but look at how wide those flare lines are. The reason that oil came off here, that's where it hit the belt coming up. But look at the bow ties. Not much oil there. It looks like it's almost gone. Over here, there's very little there. Well, how come there's some left there? Because urethane balls don't absorb it as much, but you can see how shiny it is here, and then down here, actually this is even wiped right there. Probably it rolled along this line here. There's very, very little right there where it's crossing those lines. So how could all of this oil get redeposited down lane? It doesn't. If I put a weaker layout to decrease the flare lines, if I put a stronger layout, remember my axis was right here, 5 over by 1 inch up. If I put a stronger layout, what if I drilled a 1-inch pin? Now these lines would get closer and therefore make the bow tie look a lot longer. Therefore, this ball would have more of a capacity to redeposit oil down lane.
So this gives me a good time to transition because you mentioned it. You said 1-inch pin. There was a question earlier in the week that they wanted to be asked. How are your feelings on short pin layouts on a resin ball compared to just using whatever your normal layout is on a urethane ball?
My feelings on that. My feelings is that if it's raining outside, I immediately go and grab a crescent wrench to protect me from the rain. Crescent wrench isn't a usable tool to protect me from the rain. An umbrella is the tool that I need to protect me from the rain. So my feelings are the crescent wrench is a usable tool if used properly.
Like 10 people just tuned out as soon as he said that.
Well, I guess if people are leaving
We
because
almost got up to 60 people watching at once. That's why I was doing that.
I'm in that mood today. I guess I'm in that
As soon
mood.
as you said that, boom, right back down to 45.
Really? Did you guys leave me? I guess you wouldn't be able to answer yes if you left me or not. Here's the point. The crescent wrench is a usable tool. The umbrella is a usable tool. But if we're using an umbrella to try to screw or hold on to a nut in the back of the machine, then that's not the way that tool should be used. How does it relate to bowling balls? What are my feelings about urethane balls versus stronger layouts or lower flare layouts in resin balls? What are my feelings regarding all those things? They're both usable tools. If you have the capacity, which many of you don't, but if you have the capacity, maybe you have an older ball that you don't use very much. Bring it in, let us plug it, and let's put a stronger layout in that to decrease the flare and let you go play around with it a little bit. Just play around with it, experiment with it. Urethane bowling balls. What happens when you decrease the flare of a resin ball? What happens to the response time characteristic of that layout? It makes it a little smoother. It's okay. So, I hope I'm not dodging your question. I hope it doesn't come across like I'm dodging your question. Stronger layouts in resin balls, they're usable. Layouts in urethane balls, they're usable. Amount of transition that happens with a urethane ball, it's, put it this way, the amount of transition that happens at the end of the pattern as far as carry down is directly related to how much flare is being used. Okay? With little flare, those lines of redepositing oil are much longer. With more flare, those lines of redepositing oil are much shorter. That's the important thing. Now, how do you know? Just over time, hopefully you can start paying attention to what's on the rack and how much flare people are using and where their ball is coming out of the pattern. And you can start to, if you're in my bowling center and Josh and I are here, we can walk down with you and show you what the transition lines look like. We do a whole class on that throughout the summer in the Bowl U workshops. I take everybody down there and show them how transition and what it looks like. We throw a plastic ball. We throw a urethane ball. We throw a resin ball. We throw weaker flaring or lower flaring balls, and you can start seeing the length of the line that gets carried down. Okay? Of all of those balls I just mentioned, which one has the most depletion characteristics? It's not that the ball just is like a vacuum cleaner and sucks up oil as it's going. But if we took a ball and wiped all the oil off, look, this hot cell, it still has all the oil on it. But after a couple minutes of me blabbering and chirping back and forth about whatever's off the top of my head, how much oil was left on the ProMotion?
Is there anything left on it now?
There's nothing left on it now. It's gone. None. Okay? So, I try to refrain from having an actual gauge or a number, a definitive number, to dictate or talk about how much does this ball absorb oil versus this ball. Is there a way that you go for R&D? But when I'm bowling, I can tell you I'm just trying to adapt to what I perceive is happening and then use my physical tools and my understanding of ball motion to try to just adapt to that. Should I start out with an asymmetrical ball? You can. If you have a symmetrical ball that you like, I would suggest starting out with symmetrical. It'll be less sensitive to the changes that are going to happen. Does that mean you shouldn't use asymmetrical? No, not at all. Not at all. Knock the pins over. But you better be able to adapt to transition. During our league makeup, I started out 267, and then I shot 181, and then I shot 280. I didn't adapt to the transition that happened. And it was Tim's fault. It was all Tim's fault. Tim ruined my line. It's my line.
It's usually my fault. Thank God Tim's here.
Yeah. And if I was bowling with
Scapegoat.
Josh, it would certainly be his fault all of the time because he plays left of me. He plays left of me, so he's ruining my line. Get off my line. But how many times as bowlers, I mean, I was guilty of that at one time too. I really was. I was the one that was vocal back there talking about how the pattern's different. I was the one that was talking about, look at this person doing this, doing that. And then I started realizing through Bowl U that it's my job to adapt. It's not my job to complain, it's my job to adapt. So I've stopped being that guy complaining. I'm the best at complaining when I don't strike. I'm just kidding.
Want to go there.
Yeah, we don't even want to go there.
Throw the hands in the air.
You got to throw the hands in the air. I'm really good at throwing my hands in the air. Whatever. I'm very competitive. And when things aren't going my way, I'll find any reason to blame anybody else other than myself. I didn't bowl that well this past weekend up in Canada. And as I was driving home, I was pretty angry with myself. And the only conclusion I could come to was that, you know what, Brad? You didn't do your job. I didn't do my job. So, anything else?
Some
Or are we
people-
good today?
Some people feel like that every weekend, Sourcey.
Yeah.
Kyle asks thoughts on asymmetrical balls for two-handers and high rev rate players.
There we go again. High rev rate player, two-handed player. Well, the only thing I can think of with a two-handed player that you have to be careful of is getting the oil off the ball for your next shot. Otherwise, before you know it, you become a one-handed player without knowing it.
Good.
If I tried to have my other hand on this ball, after a while, all this oil would be getting all over my hand. So you better get that oil off if you're a two-handed player.
I also remember a question from Tom Brady back during the week. He said something.
I don't like him. He plays for the Patriots.
And he's
I
a
don't like-
lefty.
Oh, you mean Tom
Tom
Brady?
Brady.
Tom Brady. I
Yeah.
thought you meant Tom Brady.
Oh. Stupid. But anyways.
I'm okay.
So he said something about, because he had noticed that a lot of your balls are like 5.25 inches from your access point. And he said something, if I could remember. Matter of fact, I'm just going to go back and look at the question. If my phone would work.
Okay, Josh is going to try to find that question. My thoughts on two-handed bowlers, asymmetrical balls. Remember, an asymmetrical ball is nothing more than a tool. Symmetrical ball is nothing more than a tool. Which of those is going to be more sensitive to transition as it's occurring? Typically, for me, in my experience, it's the asymmetrical balls. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have them in your bag, but if a stronger asymmetrical ball and you throw it with two hands, how much speed do you create? Do you create enough speed? Is there enough oil to be playing where you're playing? Do you have the ability to change your rev rate? Do you have usable physical tools to be able to adapt to the transition that's going to occur? Those are the questions. It's not a, nope, and no, you'll never catch me being up here saying, nope, two-handed bowlers should not use asymmetrical balls. I'm not going to say that. Depends on what you're bowling on. Do you have the ability to be able to adapt to transition? Because that's what bowling is. Okay, go ahead, Josh.
Okay, so Tom Brady's question. How about why you drill different balls the same way, aka favorite drilling? And what are some of the adjustments from your favorite drilling that you would make? That's what he asked.
Okay, so I guess there's kind of a two-part question. Let's take the first part of that question. Why do I drill... Well, let me paraphrase the question. Why do I drill pretty much every ball that I drill with basically the same layout? Well, I've been very, very fortunate. Very fortunate in my career, to the point to where now that I'm going to be turning 50 and I've been doing this for a long time, I'm very humbled as to some of the privileges that I've been able to have in the sport. I have the luxury of being able to drill a lot of bowling balls. And I know that, so it's easier for me to say that, yeah, just put your favorite drilling in every ball. Well, many of you work really, really hard all week long and save money so that you can buy a new bowling ball. So it's not that easy for you to just, drill the same layout in every single ball that you drill, because you need different shape options. The reason why I do it is because the dynamics of the ball, it allows me to be able to see the dynamics of that particular ball. There's many times, once I find a ball that I like, then I do put different layouts in that ball so that I can control the end of the pattern, or I can control the transition. It gives me different usable tools. But I know many of you don't have that luxury. So I guess the suggestion would be, is once you do have a favorite layout, put that layout in some of the proven performance balls in the industry. If you're buying the brand new ball that's just going to be the hottest ball on the market, then come on in and let us watch you throw some shots. If you're more of a speed dominant person and that ball we're drilling happens to be a lower friction ball, then we may want to vary off of your normal drilling and maybe put a little stronger drilling in that ball to allow you to use that ball in a way that you're comfortable with in your leagues. Does that answer the question? Okay, what was the second part of Tom's question?
Something about how you would make adjustments. Hold on. Take me 2 seconds. Here it is. And what are some adjustments from your favorite drillings you would make? Not really sure what that means.
Like the
Well,
shorter,
okay,
longer pins, maybe.
Yeah, so let's say this. So, for the most part, let's just say that this 5-inch pin layout, this is probably a layout that I use in just about every single ball. Can you get that, Tim?
Yep.
Okay. So the higher that I put that 5-inch pin, this is probably a little bit longer. It's probably about 5 1/4. But the higher that you put that pin for that ball, typically that layout will be a quicker response time layout as it would be if we used lower pins. But what have I heard for years? For years, I've heard that a lower pin layout, if we take this ProMotion, and if I were to drill another ProMotion with the pin right here in my palm, for years I've heard that, well, the lower pin makes it roll sooner and the higher pin makes it go longer. Well, I have to tell you something. If you're going to use that language, I understand what you're saying, but now you're using language that's relative to oil. And oil is not constant.
Christina Zerbinsky's watching.
Very much, oil is really a huge variable. Different types of oils, different machines that put the oil down, different amounts of oils. So if lower pin balls roll sooner than this higher pin ball, the one that would be more sensitive to transition would be the higher pin layout, because that's a quicker layout. As the ball sees less and less oil, the friction component continues to go up, and therefore that ball will typically respond quicker than the lower pin. The lower pin layout will be smoother to friction. Then when you go across town, it doesn't matter if you're on a higher volume or not. Once you identify where there's friction, then the lower pin layout will be smoother than the higher pin layout. Okay, so that's how I use different layouts to be able to make changes. And then keep in mind, what if I take a lower pin layout of this ball and have a shiny lower pin layout, but a dull higher pin layout? Which one probably would be smoother? You know what? I don't really know. I can quicken up the response time of a given ball with surface prep, whether that's shine, compound, 4,000 on a spinner, 4,000 on a fast spinner, 4,000 by hand, 1,000 by hand, 1,000 on a spinner. I mean, there's all kinds of different things. And I want you to realize that those are nothing more than variables so that you can match and identify the ball motion that your eye likes to see. Those are usable tools. Not to mention, you have your own speed and rev rate characteristics that you have to learn to be able to do. How many of you could throw it slower if you wanted to? Everyone. But how many of you really master the ability to throw it slower on purpose? How many people have the ability to raise or lower your rev rate? Probably less. Probably less people can do that as can slow down or throw it faster. So, and I understand that. I would say speed control is the number one most usable physical tool.
Yep.
Then you got layouts. Then you have surface preps. Then you have pin distance from your axis. Then you have higher pin versus lower pin. You got all kinds of things.
But going back to last week's episode, a ProMotion, I don't give a crap what we do to it, isn't going to roll like an astrophysics.
No,
Or
I
a
mean,
hot
two
cell
different
isn't going to
balls.
roll like a ProMotion. There's technology behind these things. We can, like Brad saying, we can tweak it and get it fine-tuned a little bit, but relatively, you're buying a ball for that particular motion.
My suggestions to you really are just this. If you're one of our customers and you want to have our help matching up a layout for you, then bring in the balls that you have. Bring in the balls that you like. We'll look at those layouts. We'll look at the surface. We'll gather some information on how many games do you have on this ball? Well, what about this ball? I just bought that ball. Okay, so we factoring all that. Let us do that for you. And then if you want to buy a new ball, we can help direct you to a ball that would best, maybe some of you need just some different options of shapes. Maybe you don't need the same layout in every single ball. You know, maybe you just need some different shape options. And let us help you with that. Okay, I really believe that we can help you with that. And that's not to say that we're the only pro shop that can do that. There's certainly other ones that can. But if you're not happy with what service you're getting somewhere else, come and just give us a try. I think you'll be surprised. Okay, anything else? We're going on almost an hour. This will be a quick one today. I didn't throw as many shots down the lane.
Why don't you throw a couple? We've been on 45 minutes now.
Throw some of your comments out. Okay, I'll throw the Trusty Pro Motion.
Then we'll go like to the Astro. Completely two different ends of the spectrum.
Okay, standing on 17, looking at about, standing on 15, looking at about 17. That's been typically what I've been doing in these videos. Got that one in. That was about 19 with the arrows. Yes.
Dave has a question.
Okay, Dave has a
Walk
question.
up here though. Everybody can hear you.
If you have a symmetrical core with a faster response cover time, is that going to help a person with low rev rate without changing or without chasing the transition as much?
Okay. All right, this is how I would answer that. Okay, so we can have a conversation right on what surface are we bowling on? Who are you bowling with? What oil's being used? How long's the pattern? Is it on fresh? Is it on blend? Is it on burn? How fast are you throwing it? What's your other favorite balls? So I want you to understand it's not that it's an absolute answer. Here is the answer. Great. Rick used to say this to me. Rick Benoit with Bowl U said this to me hundreds of times while I was learning. Brad, it's not that there's a right or a wrong answer. You're an artist. You have to become an artist. And it's nothing more than another paintbrush. These bowling balls, these are nothing more than our probing tools. These provide us feedback on the pattern. Brad, these bowling balls, these are like a paintbrush, brushing the oil around the lane. And if you want, okay, one of the lights just went off. Don't freak out. The sky's not falling.
Just hit the rocker.
These bowling balls are like a paintbrush. These bowling balls are going to brush oil around the lane, and they're going to take oil off the lane. So Dave, I'm not trying to give you a political, dodging of the question. I want you all to realize, just leave it off.
Yeah, that's fine.
I just want you all to know that while those are great questions, and the fact that you even know about asymmetrical and symmetrical lower rev rates and all of the variables by name, our job is to still mix those variables. Okay? What's the most important element in the 5 Bowl U elements? Pins, athletic aura, lane, physical, or the bowler, and ball motion. What's the most important element? By far, it's the bowler. The person bowling the ball, because it's our job to mix the elements together. a little bit more of this, a little less of that. I need a little more speed. If I'm going to this ball, I know this ball's a little stronger core. What's that going to mean? More friction. Well, I got it shiny for a reason, so it's going to decrease that. What's it doing to the response time? When am I bowling on it? All of those things have to do with, as you know, gathering information, sorting through that information, and then committing to something. Gathering, sorting, and committing. Not to the point of being confused. Some people, believe it or not, some people, they're their own worst enemy. They know too much of the language, therefore they clog their thinking skills and they get in their own way. Just go throw bowling balls, go throw shots, and adapt to what you see. Just try that for a short time. What would, let's teach in extremes. What would a strong asymmetrical ball for a person that throws it fast, what would that be the difference in a urethane ball with a weak layout for a person that throws it fast? The same bowler, but we're bowling on the grass or a sandbox. All of a sudden the friction component is so high that you can't see any difference in any of them. Well, what about if we put oil on the carpet, as Rick Benoit would say? The amount of friction that would be there still, because we're bowling on carpet, is still significant. What about now if we put oil on a lane? Oh, well, now there's the magic gauge to what it is. Is one going to be stronger with another? Of course, yes. As we lower the friction component, sand, grass, carpet, or Brunswick anvil lane. Which one has the lowest friction component? Brunswick anvil lane. Okay, so on that surface, does the oil matter as it's moving around? Of course. Will the characteristic of a strong asymmetrical ball be different than a weak layout in a symmetric ball that the cover stock is really low friction? Will you be able to distinguish friction differences in those two extremes? What do you think? Yes, of course. So now, if you can understand and grasp what I'm saying when we're talking in the extreme cases, then as you get over here to all these resin balls and layouts and surface preps and pin position, pin distance, higher, lower, oil absorption, I got 80 games on this ball and this ball's fresh and this other one's got 200 games. You saw the difference in those 3 phase 2s that I threw. So learn to be creative. Learn to be an artist. Learn to gather information by using your eyes. And then if you're using that strong ball and there's too much friction because you see it, don't just try to move to more oil. Try to use that other ball that creates less friction. Well, now I need more friction. Well, then slow down. I can't slow down. Well, then you got to come in for a lesson. It's just the way it is. You got to learn to have the abilities to navigate, to duck and move, to move around. You got to have some capacity to be creative. And your physical tools are just that way. And I know it was a crude analogy with the umbrella and the crescent wrench. But if you think about it that way, this is nothing more than a tool. What I do with the tool, yeah, that's an important factor. But I should be the one that creates the ultimate difference. The uniqueness of the bowler is the one that matters the most over any ball that you could drill. Okay? Our job in the pro shop is to help match you up with tools so that you can be effective in the environment that you're in. I'm not going to be going and selling umbrellas. I'm going to open up an umbrella factory in the Sahara Desert. It's not going to work. I might do good to have a water stand in the desert. That'd be a good tool for me to have. So I hope you understand what I'm saying, okay? I'm getting long-winded, I'm
Yep.
sorry.
Couple more shots and we can wrap
Oh
it
yeah,
up.
couple more shots, okay, throw motion. Standing 15, looking 17, I'll throw this one better.
The Astro in that same area, just give him a view of
It's funny, I was just gonna say that. I'll throw each one of these balls as close to that shot as I can, okay? I'm gonna try to be a throw bot as best I can. Astrophysics. Looked the same shape on the lane, same shape, but it definitely was different to my eye. I don't know if you can see that. Crux Prime. Oh, I love the way that Crux Prime looked. I want to drill that same layout in my ball. Why? You might be a altogether different characteristic of a physical bowler, and that's okay. Same shot with the Crux Prime. Proper ball motion never changes. How we accomplish proper ball motion is changing all the time. Now this is a league shot. Remember, it's been bowled on last night, so it's a league shot. So this is why, for the most part, which is the best ball for you? There's a lot of balls that'll match what you do. Try to throw my fourth identical shot with a different ball. Those last three were pretty good. That one I got a little bit to the right, so I'll throw that ball again, see if I can execute a little bit better shot. That doesn't mean a better shot that strikes. I just want you to see the subtle difference that that ball has relative to the Prime. Wipe the oil off with my chamois. Don't have to worry about the bow ties. There's no oil there anymore. Okay. 15 to 17. Without a doubt, I can see that that ball, the Pro Motion, and the Prime, they were a lot smoother to that friction than was the Astrophysics. I don't know if you could see it here or not. Now I'm going to throw the Idol as the last ball I have out here. There are lots and lots and lots of games on this as well. Okay, probably like that one Phase 2 that I threw a couple weeks ago. You saw how smooth that was at the end of the pattern. That was very smooth. It almost looked like it was a little on top of the oil. Like it didn't really get down in the oil. Oh, well, man, I got to get that ball baked and got to get that oil out of there. No. What if one of the other balls is too quick at the end of the pattern? Whew. Then I can just go to that Idol to help achieve that same shape that I want. But on the pattern that's such a quick pattern, I might need a smoother option in that at that time. Okay? All right, I think that's it for today. I think today was pretty good. Dave, any more questions? I liked today, as it turned out. I wasn't sure that I would. Keep in mind, Bowl U, I think, is the best teaching that's out there. So just come on in and let us help you. I'm still in town now during the week quite a bit. You can reach out to Josh if you want to get together with me or see if I'm able to be here. I'm more than willing to try to be here and spend a few minutes with you to help you get you something matched up. And Josh was just telling me that here in the next week or two, we'll be placing our big order for the Christmas rush. So we're all ready for all of you for the Christmas presents and all that stuff. And some of the new releases that are coming out. I just noticed that my Phase 3, I just got an email from Storm that my Phase 3 is coming. So
maybe we can do a video on that.
yeah, maybe we'll do a video on that, okay?
Before it comes out.
Maybe we have a discussion on what our expectations are of that ball. And then I put my normal 5-inch pin layout in that ball, and then we throw it relative to my expectations, and you can be a part of that. How about I'll make a deal with you? I will not throw that ball. It'll be just like the ProMotion. I won't throw it. I won't have any expectations on it, and we'll come out and we'll just throw it and we'll learn together.
I got
okay?
one last question before we close out.
One last question,
Real
okay.
quick. Maybe someone can answer, why does other equipment roll so much better than the newer stuff coming out? Meaning some of his older balls, I would think.
Why does older equipment roll better than newer stuff coming out? I don't know.
I think that's different for everybody. I think if people like a
I,
certain motion.
I know that the ball that's going to be coming out in 3 years will probably earn its way in my arsenal in about 30 games. I can't wait. You know, I don't know. I do know that in my arsenal is only proven performance balls. None of the balls in my arsenal that I use to give me information about the pattern, none of them have less than 30 games on them. Some of them still have 100 to 150 games in them. It doesn't mean I use them everywhere I go, but I might throw that idle that you just saw, I might throw that just a couple shots to make sure that, wow, there's a lot of oil down lane, to help me clear up the picture as to how I'm going to attack this pattern. Okay? Again, you can learn about that stuff when we get together. Hopefully I'll see you next summer for Bull U. So that's it for today. Thank you for joining in. Please let Josh know more about comments and questions that you have. It makes it easier for me trying to think about what I'm going to do from week to week. And again, hopefully it's worthwhile. Thanks for joining us.